All right, everyone. We are now back here discussing a different type of buyout and one that I'm very excited to make this video on. I'm very excited to be in this position that it seems like my math checked out and the administration made the decision that it was untenable and was going to cost more money in the long run to keep Brian Kelly, the A&M ass kicking, and just embarrassment of what all took place and all the converging storylines kind of led to this moment where now Brian Kelly is no longer LSU's coach and we are on the hunt once again. But I want to focus on this lauded $50+ million buyout because I think the narrative around it isn't super factual. And I think the national media is one, dumb, and two, fear mongering a little bit with this number. And I'm already starting to see some anxiety in the fan base in terms of LSU's financial status in the long run of things. We're not going to be able to afford to do what we need to do to get Lane Kiffin or whoever it may be. So I want to kind of debunk some of these narratives, give you the current situation. There's a lot of rumors floating around. Have they reached a buyout figure? Why are they even talking about a reduced buyout figure? BK has all the leverage. We're going to get into all of that right now. And our last video did pretty good numbers on the assistant coaching buyout, so hopefully you guys enjoy this one. But let's just get straight into it. Brian Kelly's buyout, it's not going to be as bad as you think. If you're not super locked into the nitty-gritty of it all, I would almost bet my life that we're not going to pay the full amount. And let's get into why. So yes, as of right now, unless I'm missing something in the last 10 minutes, we owe Brian Kelly almost $92.5 million, 90% of his remaining contract. This was year 4, so we had 6 years left. Crazy. Can you imagine another 6 seasons of Brian Kelly? There's no way. But let's talk first about something you might have heard today or yesterday, depending on when you're watching this. A report came out. I can't remember the reporter's name out of New Orleans, but that we have reached a settlement on the buyout with Brian Kelly for it was between $20 and $25 million, and we're using the morals clause in his contract as justification for that reduced number. This could mean a number of things. Moscano just came out and said the people he's talked to said that's not true. We'll see. I think it's not 100% done deal, but I could see there being some truth to this. Sounds like Brian Kelly let me exit out of this, was a very bad boy in his Baton Rouge tenure from not caring. Looking back at like the whole Keyshawn Cortez Hankton thing, LSU has some leverage there. I'm going to talk about the Greg Brooks lawsuit and how that could kind of flip on its head for Brian Kelly at this point. And there was one rumor that I think is true that I've seen online regarding his personal life that I'm not going to get on here and say, but if it is true, like I think it is, you're a real piece of shit, Brian Kelly. Some other important clauses to note in his contract that everyone's getting wrong right now. First one is, I think 7 out of 10 fans think that we're cutting a check in the next like 3 months for $50+ million to Brian Kelly. That's not how this buyout worked. That's how Billy Napier's was. It's not how Brian Kelly's is. We have the remaining 6 years on his contract to finish this thing out. So it's going to be paid in monthly installments. I think it's 800 grand a month. Another huge thing to note is a part of Kelly's contract, the language was he needs to use best efforts to obtain similar athletic related employment in another position with compensation at fair market value. So, obviously that means getting another coaching job. And I've already heard people say, why would he get another coaching job? Apparently, I read a Yahoo article from Ross Dellinger today. Brian Kelly apparently has told people close to him he does want to continue coaching. Where that might be, what program would hire him, I'm not sure. But, he has a lot of wins. If he falls in the right situation, a place where you win 7 games and people will be happy, maybe it can work out for him. The contract that he gets, say at another school, that reduces the buyout itself. Also, TV, it applies the same way. So Nick Saban makes, I think, $15 million to do game day and all that stuff for ESPN. Now, Brian Kelly wouldn't command nearly as much as that, but hey, if it was 3-4 million, we're still knocking it down a little bit. Next, there was a rumor yesterday that got reported that maybe kind of goes hand in hand with the morals and ethics clause in his contract, that they reached that agreement, that LSU is offering him a 40% lump sum offer on his buyout, which would be around $21 million. But I'm sure you're sitting there like, what would make Brian Kelly, agree to this? Well, there is some precedent for these type of things. If you want to look up Gus Malzahn's situation in his buyout with Auburn, he had a similar type reduced buyout. Scott Frost with Nebraska, same type of thing. So there is a precedent, but you're probably thinking, why? Well, one, there's going to be a lot of legality and lawyers and attorneys involved if this thing is going to run the course for years. Especially if you go back to like my previous slide, LSU is going to want to play this very dirty. They're going to want to get out of any money that we can. I mean, as we should. I'm glad they're doing it that way. It's going to be a lot of back and forth. It's just going to get messy, and it's going to be a cloud hanging over your head, and it's going to be paid out slowly over time, which you might think, who cares? But for someone as rich as him, maybe 5 million, 21 million, just to get that check here quickly, it's just worth it. He doesn't have to go through all this other stuff, and he can just get out of worrying about LSU. Another thing is, and you're already starting to hear it with the insiders, is the dirty laundry is going to start being aired on his tenure here. You might say, who cares? For someone who had a Hall of Fame resume coming into LSU and probably is still in that light, his legacy has taken a big hit. His reputation has taken a big hit. The school is probably going to start leaking some things to leverage their negotiation on this buyout that, it makes them look bad. And that's not what Brian Kelly's going to want. And like I said earlier, there are some things that I have heard that make him look very, very bad. And the last one, this is what someone else said. I didn't have to come up with this myself. I saw someone on Twitter saying this. There is this lawsuit with Greg Books going on, naming LSU and Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly no longer being the coach of LSU flips the dynamics of how he's going to be represented. I think LSU, they can flip it on the head is, hey, we're not going to defend Brian Kelly and use the extent of our resources to do that. Now, I'm not super sure how that's all going now. That lawsuit is very messy. It's hard to get any truth of the matter in that case, but they could flip, and all of a sudden, you don't got the 500-pound gorilla in the room, which is LSU, and all the money and resources behind that. It could get nasty for Brian Kelly and his reputation, outside of this lawsuit. But, that is something to consider. So in the grand scheme of things, what does this mean for the coaching search? I've already seen people with some anxiety. Oh my God, we're paying $50+ million. We're not gonna be able to afford to get Kiffin and then give him a proper staff and then spend the 25 million, 20 million to build out a roster for next season. I don't think you're gonna have to worry about that, even if we don't somehow get any money knocked off of the buyout, which I'm extremely confident we will. With the amount of money that LSU's program makes and the power brokers that we have and the private money in Louisiana, it'll just be a line item. That 800 grand, it'll just be a line item on the yearly budget. I'm telling you right now. And then another thing is you don't need to worry about LSU not being liquid enough to compete, with Penn State, Florida, Auburn when it opens. You're not gonna have to worry about LSU not having the money, not having the nuts in that situation. And like I've been saying, I think LSU will play this pretty dirty because I guess that's what you do in these situations. But I'm very confident reading up on how previous buyouts went in other places, other SEC schools. This is going to get knocked down, if not soon, in a year or two. Especially if Brian Kelly really does want to continue coaching, which I don't understand why Dellinger would lie about that. He's a respected journalist. So this is kind of where we're at with it. Crazy times we're living in. I want to do a video on the coaching search here in the next couple of days, but I thought for right now, let's quell some of the fear. I just don't see a world where LSU is forging over $52 million from what I understand. So I think we're going to be okay. I think these negotiations are going to get dragged on. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get gross. But I think what the average fan needs to know is that it's going to be okay. LSU's liquid. We're going to get this buyout reduced. I mean, if we can get this from 52 to 25, that changes everything. That's $30 million that we can now use on the rosters. I don't think LSU would make this move maybe as rash as it seems if they really didn't have a good feeling on this. So, hey, let's see. But just made the year a lot more interesting. So I hope we can continue to do some more videos like this. And I appreciate everyone tuning in.